welcome to our weekly 30-minute webinar. My name is Dre, I'm with Variphy, and today I'm joined by Victor, another SC over here at Variphy. I'm quite certain you have heard his voice on here before or have probably worked with him already. Good morning, Vic.
Hey, Dre, how's it going, buddy?
Doing fantastic, sir, doing fantastic. All right, before we get started, just want to mention that we are currently looking for additional candidates to join our Verify Cloud EFT/beta that's currently in EFT3. So if you have any interest, please let us know. You can contact us at beta@verify.com and cloud@verify.com, or you can hit up your account manager for more information. Okay, so for today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on work from home versus in-office productivity. All right, first we're going to start off with a quick overview of our company and what we do. We're going to jump into a live demo where Victor will guide us through the work from home versus in-office productivity. We'll pause for some Q&A and get some of your questions answered. During the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel on the bottom right of the screen. After Q&A, we will reward one lucky attendee with a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang around to see if you've won. All right, quick overview of Variphy. Variphy is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR reporting and call analytics, customizable dashboards and widgets, UCCX reporting, remote phone control, and change management. But today we're going to be focusing on the work from home versus in-office productivity. If you have any other questions or any of our other features, you can most definitely let us know and take them offline and get those answered for you. Before we get started, we want to announce that Variphy now offers a new service that provides managed consulting services to our customers. Variphy's SCT will be engaged on a one-on-one basis to remotely provide additional consulting, unassisted reporting, dashboard configuration, and system monitoring assistance. This is a service that provides a dedicated SC to do the heavy lifting of report creation and generation. For more information, please contact us, and we'll be glad to speak more in depth about our new service offering. All right, Victor, are you ready to get us started?
Let's get rolling, bud.
All right, let me go ahead and give you the ball.
All right. All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We appreciate everybody coming out. One of the things that we're going to go ahead and address today, like Dre said, is we're going to take a look at some of the productivity that we are getting a lot of requests for. People working from home, people working in the office. We're starting to get a lot of requests of people really starting to make decisions on, how productivity is when people are working from home versus in the office. So that's what we're going to take a little bit of a look at today. So to get started, we're going to address this by looking mainly at the values of work from home versus in office by looking at different types of devices. There's a lot of different ways, but for the business unit, a lot of times and what we're seeing with a lot of our customers is the ability to look at soft phone versus hard phone usage. And I use the term soft phone somewhat loosely. That could be, Jabber devices on your Androids, iPhones, Jabber on your desktop, versus things like hard phones. When people are in the office, they're at their physical desks, they're using their hard phones. So we're going to do a little bit of a comparison based on hard phone versus soft phone usage. So there's a couple different ways to be able to perform this. So one is to look strictly at your devices. In this scenario, I'm going to actually use something that we have that's called rate tables. And if you have any other questions, I'm not going to dig too deep into rate tables for the purpose of this demonstration. But if you're looking for some more information on building out rate tables or anything like that, definitely take a look at our previous webinars. We've done some rate table webinars in the past that'll kind of walk you through how to go ahead and build out rate tables. So if you just go to our webinars page and just search for rate or rate tables, you're going to go ahead and see a webinar in there on some detailed information on how to build rate tables. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys really quickly on how we're going to build that for this particular purpose. So if I pop over to the gear on the right-hand side over here, I have an option for rate tables. So if I click on this guy, it's going to bring me into the ability to build or create a rate table. Rate table doesn't necessarily have to be for rating. I don't have to apply charges for this, but what I can use is the rate table to develop certain type of accounting types. And in my case, I created home and I created an in-office rate table. So just to quickly show you what I have here, I've created several call types and I just categorized them as work from home. If I take a look at any of these are very simple. Anything that starts with an originating device of BOT, which is basically a Jabber for Android device, I'm going to classify as a work from home. Same thing here, anything that terminates with a BOT, I'm also classifying as a work from home. By building out these rate tables, it's going to give me the flexibility to just add a little additional summary into a report to make it a little bit cleaner looking for a line of business manager or a departmental manager. All right. And if you are, like I said, looking for some more detailed information on how to build out a rate table, by all means, take a look at webinars, and we have a rate table that'll walk you through this exact demonstration here. Same thing, I'm looking at my CSF devices, so I want to see my Jabber devices. Again, I'm classifying these as work from home. I'm not rating these, but what I'm saying is anything that ends at a CSF device is going to be considered a work from home call type. And you're going to see how that reflects a little bit in a report in a moment. All right, so now that we have a couple of our rate tables, we've gone into our cluster, we have assigned our rate table to our cluster. So if I edit my cluster here, you'll notice that I have my work from home and my in-office rate tables associated in my cluster. That means anytime I create or run a report that has the accounting call type, I'm going to go ahead and give some classification of home and in-office. So let's go ahead and dig into the guts of this report a little bit here. So for that, I'm going to pop over to Call Analytics, and we're going to go right into the report section here. And we're going to build out a report based on our soft devices and our hard phones. And we're going to utilize that to determine our work from home productivity and our at home or our in-office productivity. Now, this is not the end all be all for, all work from home and all departments as well. A lot of departments may have, Android devices that they use in the office or also at home. But for a lot of the departments and a lot of the things that we hear from our customers, a good definition of the environment that we have now is that, all these people were in the office, now they're at home, they're using IPC devices, they're using Jabber devices more because they are at home. So we want to be able to go ahead and break down the difference between how those Jabber devices or those soft devices are being used as opposed to our desk phones when people are in the office at their computers. So let's build this report. So for that, I'm going to click Create Report, and I'm going to focus in on one particular business unit in this case. So we're going to use a customer support. So we're going to call this customer support work from home versus in office. All right, we're just titling our report here. The next thing, and really the crucial part of this, is developing our searches. So we need to develop our search in a way that's going to go ahead and allow us to classify the differences between work from home and in office. So for that, we're going to actually create two different search sets. Our first search set we'll say is customer support. If I can spell it right here. In office. All right. So now we're creating our in office. We're going to define our in office calls by people using their hard phones, their SEP devices. They're at their desk. But the first thing we need to do is we need to pick on our business unit. In our case, our business unit is going to be customer support. So we're going to go ahead and pick on our department for customer support. And in this case, I'm going to choose anything that went to or from my customer support department. Now I'm classifying and I'm picking out all calls to or from my customer support department. But I don't want all calls. I really want to see in this particular summary value just the calls that are being taken in the office. In other words, the ones at your desk phone. So for that, there's a couple different things we can do. We can pick on device types. But when you're dealing with hard phones, there's a lot of different device types because each particular device is going to be its own model of phone. So rather than looking at the type of device, we're going to go ahead and just look at the device name. So if I just type in dev, it's going to bring up all my device options. And I'm going to choose the originating or terminating device name. Now, all hard phone devices are going to start with an SEP. So very easily, what I've done is I've classified all calls to or from my customer support department that are going to hard phones. And I want to make sure that I match all criteria. So that way I'm only grabbing the calls to or from the customer support department that went to or from a hard phone or an SEP device. This is how I'm categorizing my in-office because I know if they're on their hard phone, they're in front of their desks in the office. All right. So now that we've established our in-office statistics, the next thing we need to do is we need to define, okay, well, how do we see our work from home? And in our case, and what we see a lot trending in most environments now is that when they're on their soft devices, that's when they're not in the office. So we're going to create a secondary search here, and that's going to define our soft devices. So what I'm going to do here is just create another search. So now I have my customer support in Office, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have my customer support work from home. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find our department here, and we'll choose our customer support department. But the next thing we need to do is we need to focus on the devices that are being used. There's a couple different ways to be able to do this. One, I could pick on device types. I could say the originating or terminating device types, and I can choose, my Android devices. I can choose my iPhone devices. I can pick up my Jabber devices. So that's one way to be able to do this, is to utilize the devices. When we do a device search like this, anytime we're searching something that has CUCM in the title, that means we have to go out to your call manager first, gather a list of all those devices. So an easier way to accomplish this same thing is to choose the device name. When we're choosing something that's not a CUCM-based field, that means that we don't have to go out to call manager to pull a list of those call records. We can actually pull that information directly from the CDR database, and it just makes for a more efficient query. So now I'm choosing my device names. We need to establish what are our soft phone devices. Within Cisco, soft phone devices are pretty straightforward. There are some rules. In other words, if it's a Jabber for tablet device, it's going to start with TAB. If it's a Jabber desktop, it's going to start with CSF. So really all we're going to do here is define our devices, and there's only about 4 or 5 of them. So we're going to say starts with, and we'll choose TAB. That's going to be our Jabber for tablet. We're going to say starts with BOT. That's our Android devices. We're going to go ahead and define our next guy down here, which will be TCT, and that's going to be Jabber for iPhone. And we'll go ahead and add just a couple more in here. We're going to go ahead and add CSF. That's going to be your Jabber desktops. And then last but not least, we're going to add our friendly IPC devices, and those are your soft phones. All right. We're not going to forget to check this guy because we want it to be all calls to or from the customer service department, but only from these devices. So now what we've done is very easily, we've defined all of our soft phones under one category, and we've defined all of our hard phones under another category. And we could pick some general statistics. I want to see the total call count for each of these categories, but some very important statistics when you're trying to compare your soft phone utilization and productivity versus hard phone, or in office versus out of office, not necessarily just the call count, but things like the average call duration. Do I have a tendency to talk less when I answer it on my soft phone because maybe I'm not in the office, I'm floating around my house, whatever the case may be. So getting some averages and some percentages in there of not only the number of calls taken, but how those calls are being handled is very important when you're trying to establish how that productivity is with work from home versus in office. So we're going to add our total average call duration. We're going to add our average ring duration. In other words, when I'm at home, does it have a tendency to ring longer than when I'm in the office? We're going to add our abandoned percentages. I want to be able to compare, do I have more abandoned calls versus in office? Same thing with answered. And we're going to add voicemail in here. So there's a lot of other statistics that you can add that make sense for your organization, like transfer calls, short duration, long duration calls. Do I have a tendency to talk more or less when I'm in the office versus at home? Things like that are all important when you're trying to make those decisions on whether, somebody working from home in the office or remotely, how they utilize their time in the different environments. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to give this guy a save, and I'm going to turn off call detail because we're not really going to get into detail in this particular case. We're really just looking at the statistics. So now we've got our report. Let's give this guy a save, and I'm going to give him a quick run here for you. All right, we'll keep that guy in PDF. My time window here, I've got some historic data in there. We're just going to run this guy for the previous quarter. So now what we've done is we've really just created a very general report that's looking at our customer service department as a whole, and it's cross-comparing all of our soft devices versus our hard phone devices. We're defining our soft devices for people that are working at home because a lot of times they haven't brought their hard phones home. We're defining our hard phones as our in-office because we know that when they're in the office, they're using their hard devices. So now what we have is a very simple report that's looking at our customer support department and giving you a complete comparison of how these folks are being productive productive throughout their days, whether they're at home or in the office. So this is kind of what you want to see. And these are the types of metrics that can help you make a decision on whether work from home is a good policy to have. So let's take a look at the statistics. Our total counts are 834 when people are working from home. Perfectly normal. Maybe you have more people working from home nowadays as you're starting to migrate people back into the office. But the counts aren't necessarily what we want to look at. It's important to have on here when you start looking at the other metrics, but not necessarily what we're focused in on. What we're focused in on here are how are these calls being handled. So we can see average call duration when somebody's working from home is 329 as opposed to 336. That's very normal. These are pretty close to each other. Same thing with the average ring duration. Those are all very close. So just looking at our first couple metrics here, we can see that our work from home versus in office is very similar. We can say that our people are being just as productive at home as when they're in the office. Then we start taking a look at our answered calls and our abandon rates and our voicemail rates. And we start to develop a picture of what our employees are doing here. And we can actually see that if we start looking at our answered rates and our abandon rates, that when people are actually working from home, you're getting a little bit more productivity. They're answering more calls. There's less calls being abandoned, and there's also less calls going to voicemail. So when you're looking at something like this for a productivity perspective and trying to make decisions on whether work from home or in office is the right decision for your company, looking at these percentage of calls abandoned voicemail, in this case, I'm seeing my customer service department is just as productive, if not more productive, when they're working from home than when they're working in the office. All right. So that's just one example of how to be able to build this out and show some statistics. But we're going to go ahead and add on to this guy for a little bit. So besides just looking at the total summary stats from my department, maybe you want to drill into your employees. Maybe you want to see how they're being productive on an individual basis. People perform different job functions. Sometimes they're more customer service bound and on the phone, and there's other folks that are, maybe doing other tasks and taking less calls. It's perfectly normal. So having those stats on a per person basis is also just important, and that's also a little bit of where that rate table is going to come in. So let's expand on this report. We have our customer service department. We've got some great high-level stats to show, hey, you know what? We are doing just as well by working from home than we are in the office. But let's take a look at the individuals. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and go to my grouping statistics. Grouping statistics is like another level of summary. Our first level of summary is based on our search. And our search we defined as in office and work from home, and we did that based on the devices. But now what I want to see is I want to be able to see the individual employee's productivity. So for that, we're going to go ahead and pick on the end users. We want to see the first and last names of these people and how they're handling their calls. So we're going to go ahead and pick on the originating, dialed, or terminating end user ID. That's going to go ahead and give us the first and last name of all the employees in our customer service department. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to see not just the total summary for the employees. That's great. We know what they're doing. We can run any number of reports on the department and see total productivity. But what we want to see in this report is the difference between when they're working from home and in the office. And to do that, again, there's a couple different ways. But what I'm going to choose is that call accounting type. This is the call type that we created in the rate table. So now we're going to get to see not only the person's name, but also a very nice summary of in-office versus work from home. And we define that in-office versus work from home by choosing those devices, the BOT, the CSFs, or the IPCs in that rate table. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some very general stats, total number of calls they took, average call duration, ring duration. You can add total call duration if you're running something for a month. I find total call duration is not super helpful. But we're going to add some of the general stats that are going to be helpful. Number of abandoned calls when they're working from home in the office. Number of answered calls, voicemail calls, long duration, short duration, and medium duration may be important when they're working from home. Do they have a tendency to answer more, but are they shorter? In other words, they're just rushing to get people off the phone because maybe they're doing other things. So we're going to add those guys in here and just take a look at those statistics. And if we scroll down here, you can set, I'm in my search set statistics, what's considered a short duration, a long duration call. Anything in between is going to go ahead and be medium duration. So we'll say short duration call is a minute or less. Long duration calls, anything over 600 seconds. Anything between 60 and 600 is going to be medium. I expect most of my calls to fall within the medium duration. What I don't want is a lot of short duration calls. or I don't want a lot of short duration calls from people working at home, but then when they're in the office, a lot more medium duration calls. All right. So what we've done here is we've said we want to summarize this based on the person receiving the call, but then we want to use that accounting call type that we created in the rate table to define what is work from home and what is not. So let's give this guy a quick save here. And we'll give him a run. And we can keep the same format and the same previous quarter. So now what we're going to see is a little bit of a different report. We're still going to have our same metrics that we're going to see from the customer service department as a whole. But what we're going to have when we scroll down is we're going to have the ability to see each one of the individuals and how they manage their calls, whether they're working from home or whether they're in the office. So this is a great report to not only show the high level, but also show what each individual employees are doing. So if you have one employee that's maybe more problematic than another, this is a great report to be able to help define that and say, hey, give somebody a nudge to say, maybe when you're at home, you need to be able to pick up the pace, or we see that you're answering a lot less calls when you're at home. So let's take a look at this guy. So as you can see, we still have the initial summary that we created here, all of our values to show our department overall productivity. But when I scroll down here, what you also get to see are each of the employees and the calls that they're taking, the number of calls they're taking, whether they're taking them in office or working from home. Now, this in office and work from home is that call type that we created in the rate table. This is a great way to very cleanly break down the difference between in office or work from home, to be able to show that on a report and make it very legible. Again, in office or work from home is defined off the rate table. And if I go over to the rate tables here, you're going to be able to see just very quickly, I'll take a look at work from home, my devices, anything that starts with IPC, and anything, in other words, anything that originated at IPC is going to be classified as my work from home. And because I'm running this report for a particular department, it is only looking at my customer support department to give me my in-office or work from home. But now what I can see is, in office, 31 calls, work from home, 8 calls. I can see the average durations are very similar. The average ring times are a little bit higher than when they're in the office, but they're also taking more calls, so that's not necessarily unexpected. The answered call percent, again, not necessarily unexpected because this person is obviously in the office more than they're working from home. But if we scroll down a little bit more, we're going to see some differences. Like I could see Danielle here, 18 calls in office, 15 calls from home. I'm looking at the average duration of each call is considerably longer when they're actually at home. Same thing here, average ring durations, answered call percentages. Again, this is a very productive person when they're working from home. But the idea behind this is giving someone the power to be able to run this and see these stats and make intelligible decisions on whether working from home is the right thing for that particular department or that particular group. And this doesn't have to be run on one particular department. This can be run company-wide. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to run this report. I'm just picking on one particular department. So another quick example, and in the interest of time, we're just going to take a look at this guy. This is a report that I built, basically not only looking at the work from home stats, but also looking at more on the soft phone stats. In other words, the productivity from a soft phone perspective for this department is outstanding. They're doing very well, if not better at home than they are when they're in the office. But we may want to dig a little bit deeper. We may want to say, okay, when they're working from home, maybe I want to see the individual devices that they're using. And why is that important? Well, it's important because if I'm looking at the devices, I get to see from a productivity perspective, are we answering calls better on our Jabber devices? In other words, maybe our Jabber desktops when we're in front of the computer than we are on our Android devices where maybe we're floating around the house. Do I have different call durations when I'm floating around the house as opposed to when I'm in front of my computer on my Jabber device or my IPC device? So this particular report here is broken down into multiple search sets. And I love the fact that you can add multiple search sets. So I created one search that's going to be my Android device, and I focused just on the BOT devices. I created completely independent search that's just my iPhone devices. And by doing that, it allows me to break down those individual devices. Where did my report go here? It allows me to break down my individual devices. So now I'm just looking at my customer service department and I'm seeing how those soft devices are actually being used. And of course, you can always add additional grouping to see how the end users are looking at those devices as well. So that's a couple different ways to be able to help make decisions on whether work from home is the right decision for your department and are you being just as productive at home as you are in the office. And there's a lot of different things that you can do in these reports. It's not just a matter of looking at the stats. Sometimes you may want to go ahead and break down hourly stats or day of week stats. So very easily you can go ahead and just toggle on something and see, maybe I want to see some hour a day stats. One of the things that we have a tendency to see, especially nowadays, is when people are working from home, they have a tendency to work a little bit later. So, when they're on their hard phones, do I see that they, stop taking calls at 5 o'clock? That's the end of the day for them. They got to go ahead and they got to drive home. Where when they're working from home, maybe they're taking calls till, 6 o'clock or sometimes 7 o'clock or picking up some calls at different hours. But just by toggling that guy on and adding hour day stats and adding your durations, you're going to get a nice graph or statistics that's going to show each hour of the day with your hard phone versus your soft phone. So great way to be able to see that productivity, but also this same information can be built into a dashboard or a widget. So as I popped into my dashboard over here when we first started, I've got several widgets set up. The concept of these widgets is the exact same concept that we use to build the reports. I define my devices, whether it was a work from home device or whether it was an in-office device. For in-office, I just focused in on the SEP devices. When it was work from home, I just focused in on the, the BOT devices or the IPC devices and things like that. So just to give you a quick example, this same search is the same search that I used in a report, but now I'm doing it in a widget. So I'm getting that constantly updating, refreshed information to be able to see, hey, how are we doing with work from home versus in office? And this is a shareable dashboard. So I can send somebody a permalink here, and anybody that wants to be able to see or look at my statistics can easily just go to that link and pull up that same information that I'm looking at and be able to see how we are performing from a work from home perspective. Here again, we're just looking at in office. Concept here is the same. This one is looking at that rate table. So I'm breaking down the work from home and in office. Here, I'm looking at the individual devices placing and receiving those calls. And if I want to see some differences on which devices are being used, I can uncheck the hard phones and just focus in on my soft devices to see which ones are getting most used. All right, so we are out of time, but this is a great way to be able to help drive some of those business decisions on whether work from home is the right thing. And this is not for everybody and it's not for every department, but this is just an additional tool that you guys have in your back pocket to be able to help drive and make those decisions. So with that, Dre, I'm going to back to you, buddy. Do we have any questions for today?
Yeah, we had one question out there. The question was, how can I distinguish between soft phone usage in office versus at home? Many of our users have not been issued a hard phone.
So that's a little environmental. It can be done. So what I focused in on was hard phones and soft phones in this particular case, but there's other things that you can focus in on. Sometimes it's device pools. Sometimes it's partitions. There may be a different partition if they're logging in with a desktop Jabber device as opposed to when they're in the office. It could also be things like originating or terminating IP addresses. When they're in the office, there's likely a set or a range of IP addresses that they're utilizing, as opposed to when they're at home, they may be having a completely separate IP address associated to their soft phone or their Jabber device. So there's a couple different ways that we can accomplish that, but that's an environmental question. So if that's something that we can help with, be more than happy. You can open up a ticket, support@variphy.com, and we would love to help you dig into some of those metrics and figure out if there's, what's the best solution for you in your environment.
Yeah, probably device IP would be good.
Yep, IP is usually one of the pretty consistent ones that we can use to help determine that if they're using, like a Jabber device both at home as well as in the office.
All right, great. I think that does it for all the questions.
All right, excellent.
Well, awesome job, Vic. Thank you so much.
You bet.
All right, I'm going to reshare my screen right here, and we're going to go and give away this $50 Amazon gift card.
And there you go. You should be the presenter, passing it your way. There you go.
Got it. All right, let's give away this $50 Amazon gift card, and the winner is going to be Larry Johnson. Congratulations, Larry, on that $50 Amazon gift card. We will have your account manager reach out to you and get you that gift card as soon as possible.
Excellent.
Once again, thank you everybody for joining us today for our webinar. Don't forget, we do this every Wednesday at 11 Pacific Standard Time. Next week, we're going to be looking at Linux Health FAQs. That's going to be June 9th. And that's going to be with Victor again and Brian McKay, our other systems engineer. Also, don't forget, we do have a webinar suggestion box on our website. So if there's any topics or scenarios that we haven't covered that you'd like to see demonstrated, please drop us a suggestion in this box. All right. Well, everybody have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye, all.